大家好，我是 Oliver Bench Fallon. So this video is mostly for those who are weight training now and want more specific advice on breathing technique for lifting. Now there are a lot of notable experts on the topic and a lot of people are talking about different ways of breathing when they're doing weight training. I'm going to summarize that all for you here today, and I'm going to also give you my opinion and how I teach my clients. Yes, the obvious answer is that you definitely want to be breathing a lot so that you have oxygen to the working muscles. But you might be wondering is why do you need oxygen since we're not really attacking the aerobic metabolism? We're mostly doing anaerobic, which is the short bouts of intense sets that don't last more than 90 seconds typically. And this is true. You can probably get away with just holding your breath for an entire set, although this is very unadvisable, but doing so will cause a huge backlog of byproducts, such as a lot of lactate and hydrogen ions, so that causes that burning sensation, and that will probably impede the end of your set, if not then for sure the rest of your sets in your workout, and this is not going to be productive for you. So you need to keep breathing to make sure that your CO2 levels and your other metabolites are at its most efficient levels. Also in this video, I'll be going over some of the breathing techniques for beginner, intermediate, advanced, and very advanced levels. For beginners into weight training, or if you're coming back from a very long hiatus, then your intensity level probably won't be very high. In which case, the only thing you really need to focus on is to remember not to hold your breath. It's very common for beginners to hold their breath because they're nervous of doing something that they haven't done before. Just remember that you want a lot of continuous gas exchange. For intermediate lifters, the general guideline is to breathe in during the eccentric part of the movement and to breathe out or exhale during the concentric part of the movement. Eccentric, remember, is the motion when your muscles are being lengthened out, stretched out. And that would be like when you're squatting, you're going down into the squat, or when you're doing a push-up, you're lowering your body into the push-up. And concentric part of the movement is when your muscles are shortening or tightening. And that is when you're standing up from a squat or when you're pushing out from a push-up. A caveat to this technique is if you're lifting very slowly, which I actually do highly encourage since it's much safer for you, especially your joints, in which case then it is perfectly fine to take multiple breaths in a single rep. This pattern of breathing is really for you to get into a good lifting rhythm, and it's to help you to focus on lifting heavy reps. It's also kind of like a mantra. For the advanced, and if you're really lifting a lot heavier weights and you're pushing really hard doing compound exercises, then you really want to focus more on your breathing now because you need that extra support, especially for your core. The support is really intended for you to have proper spinal positioning so that you can really have your spinal discs in the right posture. And this is to avoid future impingements that you might have. It also really helps with the lift itself. It does this by way of increasing your intra-abdominal pressure. And the first thing that happens is when you take a breath, your diaphragm muscle, which is right under your rib cage, draws down, and that forces your lungs to draw in air to fill up the negative pressure. Your core muscles, including your abs, your obliques, your spinal erectors, as well as your pelvic floor, they all tense up, and combined with that air pressure, it actually gives you a lot more support to withstand a much heavier load. This sensation is also called bracing, and it's a similar sensation to when you're bracing for a punch to the gut and you kind of tense up. There's actually a name for this type of technique, and that is called the Valsalva maneuver, named after Antonio Maria Valsalva, who is an Italian physician. Technically speaking, the Valsalva maneuver is actually a forced expiration against the closed glottis, which is your vocal cords. And the best example of that is when you're straining, when you're trying to defecate. Because there is some risk to using the Valsalva maneuver, I had to mention that to you. But it's really for really extreme cases when you're pushing yourself to the very max. And that's an example would be international powerlifting competitions where they're really pushing for 1 rep maxes. But for most people, even those who are training really, really hard, going to muscular failure, it won't be an issue. And for the really advanced, and those are really for those who have trained really long and hard, and I probably already know this point already, and that is to maintain intra-abdominal pressure, the bracing, while you're breathing. And this is extremely hard to do since you're actually going to muscular failure while you're still inhaling and exhaling and not holding your breath. So when I coach my clients, I will actually teach them the breathing technique that is most related to their level of lifting. And so as they are progressing in their lifting abilities and they're progressing, I will also update them on their breathing technique to match that level. Just some final points. When you are attempting to do the Valsalva maneuver, don't take too big of a breath because all that air volume entering your lungs may actually disrupt your core muscles as they become stretched out too much. And also, of course, don't want to take too little of a breath because that's the same as not breathing. You will build up too much byproducts and that will definitely impede your future sets. That's it. I hope you found that useful. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I'll see you next time.